Welcome everybody to the September 1st, 2022 Planning Board Special Meeting. Seeing we have a quorum, if we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Thank you. We have a draft agenda before us. Does anybody have any amendments, any changes to this draft agenda? If not, we can approve it. Any changes, Civil?
No.
Okay.
I do not have any change.
Richard, any changes to the agenda?
No, we're fine.
Okay, seeing no suggested amendments, I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of the draft agenda as is.
I so move.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
The draft agenda is now approved. Public comments time, and I see we have no one in attendance, so we'll pass number 3. Under new business, we're going to start the continuation or continue the rewrite of the UDO. And for the purpose of people that are watching us on YouTube, to catch them up as to where we are in this process. This is our second meeting in our phase 2 of our UDO update process, meaning the Unified Development Ordinances by which the town's business and zoning is run. We made, I believe, very good progress at our last special meeting on the 18th of August. And today we are resuming at Article 2.21, Vested Rights. The 2.21 is under our new formatted layout. This was Article 4.02 in our present UDO document. All right. Proceeding is where we left off at our last meeting. I'm at 2.21 vested rights. Just as a comment, I see that we have altered the approval process for zoning vested rights and removed it from the Board of Adjustment and placed it clearly on Town Council. And that is something that we all had mutually agreed to in our first go-around as we reviewed it. I noted, Wes, that in the 2.21B5, we're retaining the zoning vested rights shall not preclude the application of an overlay zoning district. And it's not changed verbiage, it's the same verbiage we've always had. But for my edification and the planning board edification, that I believe means that even though somebody has vested rights in developing a certain piece of property, that the town still has the ability to apply new overlay districts to their property.
Within, yes, primarily though, this I think relates to building code, fire code, etc. If there is, I would tread lightly on enacting an overlay zoning district and applying additional substantial regulations to someone that has vested rights to build a certain thing. Mm-hmm. So, but this is right from the statute. So I would say, yes, that is what it says. And in general, yes, that's correct. But it's not necessarily black and white. Does that make sense?
It does. And I understand if somebody owns property, let's say I own a piece of property and I have a business, ongoing business. If an overlay district is applied, they can't make me go back and change what I have to comply with that overlay district because I'm already functioning.
Well,
unless I make changes.
Unless you make changes. But say I come in and I'm a developer and I get an application approved through you guys for a major site plan to build a commercial building with certain landscaping, etc. Then the town adopts an overlay district and says, hey, no, you need to change all your landscaping, all the way your building looks, all this type of thing when you go to build it. That's where I would be concerned.
Okay.
But yes, you can apply overlay zoning. Someone goes to redevelop their property. It would be triggered in the terms of your gateway overlay district. You know, I don't, you know, if it's under 5,000 square feet, a certain whatever amount of improvements are made, then you have to upfit your building.
Okay.
That's a different thing.
And I appreciate
Okay,
that. I
okay.
appreciate that. Okay.
So in essence, we're counting on the good judgment to not overreach when an overlay district may be imposed on an existing.
This is be very limited cases. You would have very limited cases. This would be applicable. The overlay district is applicable to.
Do you have any examples from other venues that might?
I mean, you guys would have to be in the process of adopting an overlay district. Someone would come in, say in July, and they get a site plan approved for a piece of property that's not subject to an overlay district.
Right.
Then in August, you adopt the overlay district. I have my site-specific approval
In hand.
And then the question would be, are we going to make them completely revise their site-specific vesting plan to comply with this? I would say we would be hard-pressed to do so.
It wouldn't be fair.
That's
right.
Unless they make changes to their preliminary plot plan that are significant.
And permit choice would typically say that they're not. And so there's a whole host of things. In that case, what I'm explaining to you is that would be very rare. But you apply an overlay district and someone goes to modify their property. Someone comes in with a new plan, whatever it else,
Right.
then they're applicable to it.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is I understand the dynamics of it, but it appears we don't really have the ability or to create a regulatory. This can't happen. This can happen under these circumstances. So in essence, if this were to come up, we're really relying on the good judgment of the town council, the planning board, whoever, to say, well, wait a minute, let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
Yeah, I mean, yes, there would be guidance provided depending on what board. You guys would have a staff report, whatever it may be, and there'd be input from legal counsel. We're not going to trounce on somebody's property rights, or we do have the ability to say that you need to do X, Y, Z.
Okay.
All right, moving forward, anybody else have any comments on the 2.21? I had just one at the very tail end of it.
Mm-hmm.
In our old 4.03, we had a section which we said that no changes were recommended, and it had to do with moratoria. And I don't know, I thought it would flow in this section right here. I was looking for something after H, permit choice, to have something about moratoria, but I don't know if we're going to see it later on. It was 4.03 in the original, in the existing.
I thought we had a discussion that we weren't, and I apologize. Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me if I'm mistaken. I thought we had a discussion about the fact that moratoria is completely established by state statute, and that because of that, it did not make sense for us to have it in our ordinance. Meaning that if it changes, it would necessitate you guys going and modifying whatever it was versus just deferring straight to the statute. Site-specific vesting is established by statute, but you can have procedural items for who's responsible for certain things. And that's why we have it in here.
Right.
So I do apologize. We can put it back in here.
No.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to make sure
Okay.
that I wasn't missing something because I had no margin notes, and the recommendation was that no changes recommended. So
Yeah.
in our first pass, but that's fine. If
Okay.
you've answered it.
Okay.
It's already in
Okay.
other categories.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything before we get to the I'll call them the charts at 2.22 review procedure summary.
There there are a couple things in that chart too
All right.
that I noticed.
And I know I harped on it the last time, and you you explained it. I'm still not comfortable with the fact that I want it to be clear that the planning board has the opportunity for a public hearing, and that we would most often, because of expediency, not take that option. We would allow the public hearing to go before town council. But under planning board and under, well, where public hearing, where PH is listed, it just says R.
Yes. And so two things. One, I think we need to add a separate category for zoning map amendment rather than lumping it with text amendment.
Yes.
And in that category, same for conditional zoning district, it needs to say R-PH
Okay.
for a zoning map amendment and the conditional zoning. And then for text amendment, if you want, we can put a PH there and we can add another footnote that says for text amendments, they shall be optional at the discretion of the planning board.
That would satisfy me completely. And in fact, that would even satisfy what we talked about before in the text, where I didn't think it was clear enough that we still had the option. But this chart now makes that clear. For the rest of the planning board, I think we want to always retain our ability to have a public hearing.
Absolutely.
If we're at a situation where we need more facts, I'd like the opportunity, even though it's not expedient, to have citizens come before us.
Yeah, no, I think that's very
Yeah.
important. I mean, one of the things I'm struck by is in the 2 or 3 cases where we've had citizens come before us and present issues. I think the last meeting, the Eastwood Park residents came up. We don't always have a solution, but we're not going to know if we have a solution if they're not given an opportunity to appear before us. The solution may be as simple as, listen, Todd, get this woman's phone number, you all talk, or, call Chad or whatever. Or there may be something more systematic that we need to include in a text amendment. But yeah, I think that's crucial. I mean, the comment that I always get is, I don't know who to talk to. I have a grievance, and it just feels like, nobody pays attention, and it develops a kind of cynicism that is just not healthy. So I think this is a very, very good idea.
One other point too, Wes. What does PJ mean in under 2.22?
It means nothing but a typo. Thank you.
All right. Is it PH or
Yes,
is it
sir.
QJ?
No, it should be PH.
All right.
Thank you.
Nothing but a typo.
Yes.
All right. On 2.23, and does anybody else have any
You're doing a great job.
issue
Yeah.
with 2.22?
Yeah.
2.23, public notification requirements. You already addressed that when it comes to text amendments and public hearings and planning board.
And we would add another footnote here under published notice for text amendments for planning board. It'd say X dash PH, and it would say, we would somehow
Optional.
say that optional at the discretion of the planning
Okay.
board. Yep.
So it's optional at the discretion of the planning board for
Text amendments.
text amendments?
We have that right. We
Okay.
have that right to
Yep.
call for it.
Yep.
Ron is not here,
Yep.
and I miss him because he finds the.
Yeah, he finds
Needle
a
in the
real
haystack.
stickler for detail.
He had an issue with the 10-day, 10 to 25-day notice, and I think we all agreed, sort of agreed, to that the 10 days, the 14 days would be, the 10 days rather, would be
Sufficient.
reasonable, and that the 14 days as a minimum wasn't going to pass. So just
Yeah,
making
I
that
think
note.
that's a better standard. I was struck by, I was thinking about it the other day, Chad, the gentleman that came here about the flags that, And, we came to a good, kind of resolution, but it was, well, it's 14 days to notify. It's, and he walked out of here and I felt like, well, he kind of got a bread sandwich rather than a solution. So anything that we can do to kind of expedite and consolidate, particularly on, that's not a huge issue,
Yeah, one of the things that I was noticing when I was watching a couple weeks ago is, and Wes can correct me if I'm wrong, but the 10 to 25 days is straight from general statute.
That's correct. And so, until such time the General Assembly says it's 14, everybody knows that it's 10 and 25, and it's always been that way in every local government across our state. And so you guys going outside of it, I think, would be problematic.
I just wanted the record
Yeah,
to show
yeah.
for Ron's edification that 14,
Yeah.
the 10
Yeah.
days was now inked in.
fantastic.
And from a good practice standpoint, it's good to know for staff to tell you it hardly ever gets to 10
Well, there's
days.
2 successive notices.
Yeah.
And so usually the first one is in the 14 to 25 day period. And the second one may come within 10 to 14, but you got 2 calendar weeks
Yep.
that you have to comply with. So it's not like you're getting it on day 11 or day 10.
Well, his problem was it could get lost in the mail. And so it's, as opposed to you don't read the paper.
Talking about the mailed notice, yes. Okay, got it. Yeah.
All right, we moved on. You've inserted new definitions in as sort of placeholders, but we're going to
And
deal
you'll-
with that.
You'll get those just handed to you.
Yeah. Well, I
as
saw
we
that
go.
master development plan. You've stated that because we really needed that for conditional zoning topic,
Correct.
because that was a kind of a new thing brought up this pass through. And I wasn't sure why you had the subdivision minor expedited. That had always been in there.
I just added that for just to make sure, because we talked about the subdivision approval procedures, just to make sure you had them. That's all.
Okay.
That's the only, nothing specific.
And we've really made it easier to understand major and minor subdivisions in our new language and definitions. I was curious though, the old, and this is on page 7-2 of our outline, not to confuse that with any other page number, but the new stuff that you gave us. We've X'd out or blocked out number 9, which has to do with that all lots or all minor subdivisions shall abut an open, publicly dedicated and accepted street, Isn't it still the case that a lot has to have access to a street?
Yes, it just should not be in the definition. And so you'll have lot standards.
Okay.
It's in the inappropriate spot.
All right. I just wanted to make sure that somebody couldn't have a lot that couldn't even have a flagpole driveway going into it that would go to a street.
And when you get Article 4, when we get there, we got a ways to go.
Yes.
There'll be 3, possibly 4 different deliverables of Article 3, because it's the table of uses and all the development standards. But in any case, there will be lot standards that are applicable, and it will talk about, that newly created lots need to actually butt a public street. And then we'll have the conversation. We can have the conversation again about if you
Public street, not a private road.
That's what you all have determined that no new. That's not. We're not talking about existing. We're not talking about what's out there today. But if it's in the corporate limits of the town, it needs to be a public street. This is an ETJ. We have to allow them to be.
So doesn't that put, I mean,
You
I
don't
don't
mean
want
a
to
lot, you mean a
relitigate this
subdivision.
conversation, but sorry.
You don't mean a lot, you mean a subdivision. Or you didn't say that, but for my benefit.
Any lot within a new subdivision will need to be on a public street if it's in the corporate limits of the town.
so that pretty much mandates that any new subdivision has to have, the streets have to be public.
Correct. That's what we had. That was
guess
where
we
we
did.
arrived.
We did talk about
Yeah.
that. Great
Yeah.
land. Yes.
Yeah.
Talked
Yeah.
about getting away from private streets.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
public.
Yes.
And this just goes.
Who is left with private streets? I know Sea
Oh, there's a
Trail's been
bunch.
converted.
Yeah, there's a bunch.
So
Well, and
Oh, a
anything in the
lot.
ETJ.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
there are still a few streets in and around the town that are private that are
Okay.
not converted over.
That the
They're
town
few
is
and far
not-
between, but there are.
That the town has not taken over because they're
Lake
not up to
Shore?
standards. Yes.
Lake Shore is private. Oh, the town won't do anything.
No, Lake Shore's not.
Yeah.
It is not
It's
private.
not.
No, it's a public
Absolutely.
street. It's a town road. Metcalf is a private road,
Yeah.
which is
The far
sort of
east.
off of Lake Shore, but
Yeah.
Lake Shore is a public, a town road.
Now, is Metcalf in Sunset Beach or is it in the ETF or what
No,
is
in
it?
Sunset Beach.
It's in
Off of
Sunset. It's
Sunset
in the
Lake.
municipality of Sunset Beach.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not in the ETJ.
Okay.
Um,
So how is that, how is that resolved? I mean, essentially, we're going to have to go through and convert all of these.
No,
No, no,
No.
no.
no,
this
we're not
is just
converting.
new subdivisions.
Yeah.
It's just-
Okay, so
Yeah.
this is,
Yeah.
anybody before is grandfathered in and no
Yep.
issue. Okay.
Under the, and I don't really want to stop on definitions because I know that you're just kind of inserting them in as appropriate as we go through sections, and we're going to deal with section 7 definitions on its own. Is that
Correct.
correct? But I was curious, under building principle, we have now crossed out the reference to trailers as being principal buildings, and I thought you or somebody had said that we cannot impose some restrictions or some ordinances on trailers.
So that's based on the manufactured home age,
Yes.
which is a different thing. This that clause for the purposes of this ordinance, trailer and mill shall not be considered buildings.
Yes.
That needs to be in the structure definition. This definition is this is about delineating what is the principal structure or principal building on a property, not what is considered to be a structure.
Because it says the term principal structure may also apply. So I was assuming that those two words were interchangeable.
Principal structure and principal building are.
Okay.
But then we will have a definition of structure, which perhaps I should have included in there, that also will have that clause that says,
I'll just make a note to look for that later.
yep. And it says it now, I believe. And actually, your definition of structure will need to be updated. Somehow, the flood damage prevention ordinance definition has been functioning as your definition of structure inappropriately for many years. But yeah, but that is where you would make the delineation, because you can have a principal structure or an accessory structure.
Yes.
Key being, what is a structure or building?
Yes.
Okay. But thank you. That's a good point.
Anybody, before we move on to 2.24, did anybody have any comments on 2.23 or the definitions that we've talked about?
No.
All right, as we move into 2.24 enforcement, I reference that to previous article 1.12, and then the various sections of that. When this is sort of off topic, but when we use the word enforcement, what do we mean in this section? We talk about enforcement of a zoning regulation,
Yes.
not of a use.
Well, a use is subject to zoning rules. Remember,
Okay, it depends
Zoning-
on the zone it's in. Yes. Okay.
zoning regulates what goes on a piece of property.
Yes. Or how a piece of property is developed.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
I'm sorry. Just say that again. What you just said.
Zoning it gives you the authority to regulate how a property is developed and what is developed on the property.
Okay.
So if someone was approved to do to put a bookstore, and they have a zoning permit to do that, and then all of a sudden they change the use to a tattoo parlor, and they don't come into town to request the change of use and a new zoning permit, then the town can proceed with enforcement.
Okay.
All right. And that clarifies it. I just, as I read it, I was trying to think what enforcing of what. But it is a zoning compliance. I had nothing else in 2.24 unless someone else did. Okay, moving on to Article 3, the new Article 3 zoning, which is a very detailed section.
We're making good progress here.
I have that is going in, morphing up into, not morphing, but back referencing to 6.01.
That's correct.
And so I've got to go back and forth here. Excuse me. All right, we are cleaning up the listing, the references, the categorizing of each of our zoning districts here. And I get confused with the two words we seem to use interchangeably of classification and category. And maybe it doesn't matter, but when we look at our land use plan, we have classifications, which is a certain zone, like MR3, MR2, BB1. We also have categories of, I don't want to say categories of use, but we reference it in the land use plan as a category to be used as recreational, to be used as commercial, to be used as different, I don't want to call it styles of development, but different types of development. Am I reaching too far when I think there's two different words there and two different meanings?
I think your wording needs to be, what was the two C words that you used? Classification.
Classification and category.
So I think it needs to be zoning and classification.
Yeah. Well, if you're talking about the comp plan, it talks specifically that for the purposes of the comprehensive plan and the delineation of the future land use districts, that those terms are used interchangeably. And I believe there's even a sentence to that effect in the land use plan that it may say future land use category or future land use classification.
Okay.
For zoning, though,
Yeah, and
we're talking about
what he was
districts,
talking about.
zoning
Yes.
districts.
Okay. 3.1 general A under purpose. In the middle of the first paragraph, we talk about a zoning map. Because the zoning map is so specific, because the zoning map can change, it can be edited, it can be altered by town council. Should that be capitalized to say that it is a very specific zoning map?
In the first article, we make reference to the official zoning map, and we make it very official and explain exactly what that official zoning map is. And if you'll see on page
This is old page.
I believe it's on 1.4.
This is old, right?
No. Of your new
Okay, new. All right. Okay.
It's on page 1-3, section 1.4. I was trying to find where we call out the, yeah. So 1.4C
Mhm.
that talks about, the official zoning map and so on and so forth.
And how it's identified, yes.
Yeah, and you'll see that.
Mhm.
So
Okay. Because as I was reading through then in the next paragraph, it talks about the comprehensive plan, and I was saying, well, hold it, that is a very specific plan. Shouldn't that be capitalized? But you're probably going to respond the same way.
Yep.
That it's referenced
Yep.
and identified specifically somewhere else.
Yep.
Okay. Never mind then.
But it's a good question.
Well, it's anal probably.
No. It's all good.
You, Pete?
Uh, under B, 3.1B, we talk of types of zoning districts is the heading.
Mhm.
And in the second line, this is all new language. It says in the second line of several base zoning districts or overlay districts, respectively. An overlay district is certainly different than a zoning district.
Based on, yes.
Yes, it's different. It's
Mhm.
it's developed differently, and it has different
Requirements.
yes. I just thought the word "or" should be changed to including overlay districts, but I think I'm just doing wordsmanship that doesn't change the intent or the meaning. So I'm gonna retract that.
Okay.
Under D, compliance with district standards. The new wording here is no land within the town shall be developed. I think it should read no land within the town, including the ETJ, shall be developed.
We can add town's planning jurisdiction there,
Okay, good.
just to be clear.
Good. I think we want to be clear that an ETJ,
Mhm.
even though it's not taxable, it still is
Yep.
required to comply.
And we've got mention of it prior, but it doesn't help to be, again, clear about it.
All right, now we get into the, I don't want to advance too quickly. If anybody else has margin notes.
You doing okay?
3.2 base zoning districts. And we're off to the races.
And just to be clear, we're not changing any of the zoning districts. They're staying the same.
That's right.
Yeah.
Good point.
Under MR1, and I've got this comment in a half a dozen places, so we can resolve it by talking just about MR1 and its whether it's reasonable or applicable. We say that MR1, mainland residential district, primarily for residential use.
That's a new one. Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it says anywhere other than in the comprehensive plan that MR1 is primarily for low density residential use. And this just references it as residential use.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also not sure that the UDO either needs to or does even define what low density means. Does it anywhere, or is it really only in the land use plan or in the comprehensive plan?
Well, you would typically take that in to mean that it's a single family district, versus a multifamily district per se. So it does say single family residences, but we can add in here if you want.
Well, I just want this to be a discussion so that I'm and the rest of the planning board isn't it has a place to go to know which zoning districts are low density low and high density,
Sure.
multifamily. In that same subcategory 1 for MR1, it repeats residential development, where it says residential use and then it says residential development. I don't know if it needs to say that again.
You may be right about that.
It's just kind of wordy.
We talked about taking the planned part out, but I'm fine to take that out
Take out planned residential development.
altogether.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it reads better that way.
Okay.
All right, I'm not going to, as I said, I had these inserts about various densities in each of the zoning districts, but I'm not going to bring that up.
But sounds to me like the board is comfortable removing the repeat of residential development. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
Got it.
yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Got it.
Under A2 for MR2, it doesn't mention golf course. However, MR2 does have golf course, Oyster Bay golf course in it already. I don't know if it needs to be identified or better defined, saying that it has a golf course in it. But
We can add it. I believe it's a permitted use. So, and obviously exists. So golf courses add to MR2.
yes,
Okay.
as just another
Sure.
comma there.
Yep.
In A2 and in A3, again, this is just housekeeping, but we say as well as customary and secondary uses. We've taken as well as out of A1. Why don't we take it out of 2 and 3?
Okay. And just say and.
Yes.
Okay.
Can we go back to 2 for just a minute? Did we struggle at some point with trying to get a definition of golf course in terms of?
We do have a new definition.
There is a
for
new
that.
one in your
Okay,
section
good.
here.
Last.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, it was.
I do have a question when we get to that. so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah, I did do some further research on that. So, but we'll talk about that when we get there.
Okay.
And I do have a question, and Pete's probably getting to it on the MR3. Well, if we're there.
But before you go to MR3, okay, I keep reading MR1, and it just really doesn't make any sense to me. Mainland residential district primarily for residential use with provisions for single-family residences. Residential development.
We just took
We
that
took
out.
that out.
Okay, all right. I guess that's where I got off, and I thought it was somewhere else. Okay, and customary and secondary use.
Mm-hmm.
There
I think
are
we
other
also just-
uses that are
Yeah.
allowed
Yeah.
by our
Correct.
chart, if you will, that we haven't gotten to yet. But
Yep.
we were going to
Okay,
redo that
just seems like a-
spreadsheet.
Off sentence, but okay, I'll keep going.
Are you satisfied, Sybil? Do you?
Well,
Because I know it's
It'd
confusing.
be like a swimming
confuses the
pool,
hell out of me.
or a
it's just
fence, etc. Things of that nature.
President's use of provisions of residences,
And
residential development.
knowing you have to go somewhere else to find out what those customary and secondary uses are.
And
Which is
like-
common.
Yeah.
You should. I mean, we could list every single use right there and get rid, but then we're gonna have to list it for each.
Now, where will that be in the new UDO?
You'll have the first bit of new table uses today, but it'll only be for accessory uses today.
Okay.
We'll
But I
get
mean,
to
in the new UDO, where will that?
it will follow. It follows this.
Okay.
Yep.
That's why this article will be so.
This is why this. Yes,
There.
it's gonna take
and
a
customary.
while.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's the word.
I look
Okay.
forward to it.
Okay, got it now.
Got it?
Me too.
Well,
once it
yeah,
gets
the
going.
without a word in there connecting it to the rest of the sentence, it wasn't making sense to me. But then I see down further, they put in the word as customary and secondary uses. So I'm okay. I'm good.
All right, we were going to MR3.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess. No, go ahead. The question for later. Never mind.
Well, that's if you have it.
Well, we did the text amendment to MR3, and I guess we're going to be able to use customary secondary uses to create mixed use applications within.
Well, that was going to be my question for if that word exclusively needs to say primarily, because that you're unlikely to win some type of lawsuit on this, but I think that there's an expansion of what's potentially going to be permitted in MR3, and it'd probably be better to say primarily.
Primarily.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And the word provisions for single-family and multifamily development doesn't mean that it is a right by right. It means that
Yep.
there are provisions that
Correct.
you have to meet.
Yep.
Which, in our case,
Yep.
we've just provided another route
Mm-hmm.
to have multifamily allowed.
Yeah. So this is the area where the special use permit was imposed, correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we moving on to MB1. Is that okay to move on to that? Under MB1, we talk about primarily for the conduct of retail trade. There are provisions in MB1 for multifamily,
Mm-hmm.
but it would fall under that same wording, customary and secondary uses.
Well, it does say with provisions for residential uses in MB1.
Okay, and that would satisfy
Yep.
multi-family.
That's right. You get specific with the table of uses. These are just
Okay,
general descriptions.
okay. And by having residential even mentioned in this section, it opens up the conversation to look elsewhere and see what kind of
Sure.
residential.
And typically, folks aren't even going to look at this. They're going to go right to that table of uses.
Sure.
And
You're right.
Yeah.
I just don't want to have something in here that's contradictory.
No, we don't. Yep.
Now, in the MB1, is there a special use permit required for multifamily, or are they?
I believe so. But
Okay.
let me look.
Say that again.
Is
there a
MB1 special use? I believe it is.
special use
Yeah.
permit
I thought all of
required
it was-
for
Multifamily, they're all special use.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, it is.
Yeah.
And the same for MB2.
Yep.
It's the
All right.
Yeah, multifamily became special use across the board last summer.
Yep.
All right.
One, and I know I'm jumping the gun on this, Wes, but I'd like just to have that thought go back and forth between staff, you, and the board here. MB2 has provisions for multifamily allowances, but it's a special use permit because it references that it says, the wording is, it's the same path, we'll call it, or requirements as MR3, which means it's a special use
Mhm.
permit. When we changed MR3 to a special use permit, it then meant that MR2 needed to be, MB2 needed to be a special use permit as well. Now, again, I'm referring to the existing UDO
Mm-hmm.
and the sheet that we have with the little cartoon on it that shows setbacks, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a little green picture on the right-hand margin.
Mm-hmm.
But it says under multi-use for MB2, it says in accordance with the requirements for MR3.
Mm-hmm. That's mainly meaning dimensional requirements.
Okay, that's what
Not-
it meant before, but
Yep.
what it has now meant, what it now means is they need a special use permit for it.
Well,
Because MR3 requires a special use permit.
I think that could be an interpretation question potentially.
Okay.
Historically, it is meant. I think that someone could make that argument, and it could be very well successful argument.
Okay.
But
That's interesting.
its historical context has been to refer to MR3 for dimensional requirements.
You know what I mean, Chad, because
We actually had this conversation yesterday.
Okay.
I'm sorry, say it again.
We actually had this conversation yesterday,
Oh, okay.
where multifamily, somebody wanted to come put multifamily in the MB2. I would look at the table uses as it allowed, go down, it's special use. Well, the dimension, because there's the dimensional table would refer back to MR3 of what it would be the setbacks for those units or buildings.
And so, but in the new code, that will be, there's not going to be, you're going to have a big dimensional
there anymore.
standards table, and it will say for MB2 what the specific,
There won't be any crossovers.
and it won't be cross-referencing back and forth.
Which is great.
Yes.
So MB2 will have its very specific, boom,
Well,
no interaction with any other classification.
yes, that's right.
Which is great.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. And I support that, but interesting, because that changes what was in my mind as to what MB2 could in fact do without having to go to the Board of Adjustment.
Well, when that amendment was put in place, the conversation was, or there was discussion about, should multifamily be a special use everywhere or just in certain zoning districts? And the determination was it should be everywhere. I would say that if it is permitted by right anywhere, logically it would be in your commercial districts, right, versus your your residential districts.
Right.
But that's a
Okay.
whole nother conversation.
That's interesting. I support that. I always get I'm stepping. Well, let me go to number 7, and we have another as well as in
Okay.
7,
Yeah.
and it should be
All right.
and the same thing for 8,
I will try to make sure that all those are.
and the same thing for 10. I always get confused with manufactured home. I know it's the same thing as a mobile home, but modular home means something different, and I always get confused. I have to go back to the definitions, and
And we have a definition for that.
yes,
correct?
we do.
Okay.
Yes, we
Well,
do.
in state building code is really
What drives that?
what
Okay.
what drives that.
I mean,
Okay, cool.
I look at it as a something that's moved there on its own chassis, and that's
That's manufactured home.
Yes.
Yes.
I've always been confused as to where MH2 is. I realize it's kind of part of Bonaparte area.
It's a very small area.
Yes, it's like
And
one street.
That in
In
the
the
ETJ, is that part of the, is that being relinquished? Is Calabash?
No, that's something different.
That's a different
Or
area.
I think it's something different. I don't want to speak.
That's right here.
Oh yeah, it was right there. Yeah. Okay. I could not recall. Okay.
Yeah, the area that was relinquished was the area between Heritage and
Yep.
Beach Drive.
Now, there
on the,
is
on the west side.
There is a annexation, I don't know where it is, with Calabash, that across
Mm-hmm.
across 179B,
Yeah.
there was a big tract of land that was looking to be annexed from us
Yeah.
to Calabash.
I thought
Yeah.
that was done.
I don't know
That
if it's
was
done or
done.
not.
That's all.
I think that's been done because
Yeah.
right now there's some huge piles of dirt right there.
Yeah.
Wes would probably know better.
don't.
Sam would know better than I.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, we work with them only on certain occasions, but yeah, I think that's already.
Yeah,
July
I
is
think,
busy,
Yeah,
so
that was
think
bad.
that's, that's happened.
Yeah, that's already. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
anyway.
And
Well, let's
But
hope
it was
people can see that from her front porch.
that's right. We may be the proud owner of a big pile
I'll tell
of
you,
dirt
I've
at
never
the
seen
house.
so much dirt brought into one place in my life.
But Bonaparte, which is MH2, is really its own. It's one
District.
street, and
Yep.
it's manufactured homes are allowed.
Yep.
I was always confused as to why it needed its own district. But
If I recall, it has separate dimensional requirements.
oh, yeah, okay, yes, you're right.
Yep.
You're right. You're right.
Any clues to top of mind what those are?
It's very minor.
We
but
just didn't
yeah.
want to make non-conforming properties when
Yeah.
we established it as its own district.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. We'll get to it.
Under AF1, number 12, in this section we're on right now, we seem to have removed, well, we have removed the 1 acre minimum size. Am I correct? that
We're
you-
not removing it, but it just should not be in this location.
It should be somewhere else.
Yeah, we don't talk about
the
dimensional
dimensional.
requirements anywhere else.
It should be in the dimensional section.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any, I mean, is anybody farming in Sunset Beach these days?
No bona fide farms in Sunset Beach.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, that district's a little bit odd, but you know, you could call it MR4, for example, if you wanted to, but mainland residential 4. But I did think about that when I was updating this, that it's really a little bit out of place. That's just, it's going to be eventually developed as all single family homes.
I know, it
There's
does
some
seem silly to have that designation.
Pardon?
For that, it does seem silly to have that designation for
Mhm.
one piece of property that's already a lot of residential.
Correct.
I like the MR4 idea.
We have Westwood.
Well, but we have to look back though.
Mhm.
It's in our
Shouldn't we look
comprehensive
forward?
plan, and I want to call it comprehensive. I got to get used to calling it the
You
comprehensive
can
plan.
you can call it land use plan. It's
We
fine.
have it. We have this Bonaparte Landing Maritime Forest, and
Mhm.
there's several references to protection of it.
Yes.
That is what the AF1 really is.
Yes, there's a significant natural heritage area on there for the maritime forest. That's correct.
So even though it'll be developed as residential,
hmm
it has different restrictions for protection.
hmm
So I don't know that we want to.
I did not proceed with making that recommendation, but it did occur to me. My eyebrow was raised.
Okay.
But
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Stand corrected.
no, it's okay. It's
Moving on.
worth a discussion
Please.
item.
I still like it.
16 or CZ conditional zoning district, and I know that that's new
hmm
for us. But what I don't understand is what it means in the body of that section for a development that has a high level of certainty of being constructed. I mean, that to me is such an arbitrary statement. What is a high level of certainty?
That's a good question. It's typically, this can come out, but usually someone does conditional zoning because they know what they want to build specifically. And because of that, remember also you're approving the only thing that can be built there. It's not, sometimes it may be a range of uses, but oftentimes it's very specific. And so if I'm applying to get conditional zoning approval as a developer, then I know exactly what I want to build there.
And you have to be, you would be specific to the planning board as to what you want to do.
That's right.
So it's almost like a, I don't want to go back in history, but we almost sort of did that a little while ago here, a few meetings ago, when we were talking about track 2.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been a great case for conditional zoning.
But it didn't exist.
It didn't exist.
It still doesn't exist.
Still
but
doesn't
yeah,
exist.
Right, it still doesn't exist. So that almost gives us the ability to act as the Board of Adjustment in site-specific
yes,
situations.
this is a legislative site-specific procedure
Okay.
versus
Well,
quasi-judicial.
I guess we're the term high degree of certainty. It's one thing that somebody can come in here and know what they want to build. But the other layer of high degree of certainty, what certainty do we have that they're actually going to build
You
it?
can never have 100% certainty, but
Beg your pardon?
you can never have 100% certainty, but usually,
Yeah, but I can create. I mean, my thought is that okay, do you want the special privileges aligned with a conditional zoning format? You have to provide us some certainty that you're going to build it. Typically, the way you do that is a bond. Okay, put some money. When you build it, you get the money back.
except we have very specific rules and regulations. Here's the thing: if I'm gonna go, if I've got a piece of property, why, if I'm not quite certain that I'm gonna build that, why would I go tie my hands to a very specific thing that I can build out there?
Well, I can think of lots of reasons.
Well, you may want to sell the project.
But
We can get rid of that language. I'm fine to. So it would just say established through public input for development, and the most commonly expected application will contain a specified use or uses on small and large scale projects.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that it's in there. I would just trying to give it some teeth. And
The
if
teeth
that's-
would be if it's a large project, you would have a development agreement in place and you'd have timelines that would need to be met, that certain things need to be built. And you can condition approval upon establishing a development agreement as well.
Okay.
Because remember, if it doesn't get built, then there's just a project sitting out there, and if the investment's not there, then it can't be built for anything else except through going back and rezoning it. So,
Well, my concern in the current environment, I don't have a crystal ball, but I say there's a fair bet there's going to be some developments that fall by the wayside over the next 18 months. Now, is the town left with,
the town is not, that's up to them.
beg your pardon?
That's up to the developer. The town is concerned
No,
with-
yeah, but I mean, the developer says, okay, we're not going to build it. Now I mean, they've done the stormwater. It's a great big piece of dirt, couple acres long.
The town
But
But
also
that can always happen.
that can always happen.
Yeah.
The town also does not no longer allow performance bonds, which helps protect some of that. Question is, do you guys want to leave that clause in there or remove it? It doesn't matter to
I
me.
have no problem with it.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm just trying to give it some teeth.
I just don't know what it means. I don't know that it can hurt us, but
Yeah.
I don't
I
know
think
that it means.
it helps you
Yeah, I do too.
potentially.
I'm in favor of it.
Okay.
Okay, good.
I just didn't understand
Yeah,
it.
okay.
That's why I raised the question. All right, now we're coming to overlay districts.
Oh, boy.
And under B, 3.3, overlay districts B, gateway overlay
I
district.
know there's a change we needed to put in there.
And it talks about the last part of that, it's only one sentence under B. It says, in the areas of town that are especially prone to heavy traffic. That to me, that changes, it's arbitrary, it's undefinable. But I would like to see it say, this district is intended to protect and preserve the visual appearance of gateways into the town and to promote pedestrian, this is the ad, pedestrian and vehicular traffic safety.
Yes, and Pete, I apologize. I was going back through my notes and noticed that was a change that needed to go in there.
Yeah, I may not have heard it. but that's
Pedestrian
all-
and vehicle safety.
Pedestrian and vehicular traffic safety.
Can we throw bicycles in there too?
That
It's already in there.
That's I think that's part of,
Vehicular safety?
well, part of pedestrian safety too. It can morph into either one.
Okay. Well, it seems like it should be included.
pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular safety.
Yeah.
Well, bicycles.
I don't have an objection to that.
Yeah, you got golf carts, you got
carts, you
bicycles, you
can
got
name them
Yeah,
vehicular.
the
should
list
take
could go
care of
on
them.
and on and on. It's
I know, I
it could be
think that's silly.
skateboards, it could be, it could be anything. But I
Okay.
just want to talk about people and cars.
Yeah. Well, also too, the issue with egress in and out of, being able to make a left-hand turn out of the post office.
So,
Anything.
okay, moving on from B.
Okay, I can't stand it. You know I can't stand it. I'm trying not to say anything. I don't want to open a can of worms, but I'm going to do it.
Good.
All right. the roads that lead into town belong to the state.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
How can we control pedestrian, vehicular, and everything else?
Well-
Doesn't that fall under the heading of the state?
Well,
That they to make the roads safe?
Well,
Sure.
this isn't trying to define who owns the road. It's trying to give us the ability to influence something that we can influence.
How are you going to influence it? You can request it.
Well, you're right. We can't influence well, we can to a certain extent, but we don't have control over Beach Drive and
Yeah.
Seaside Land or Seaside
So,
and Shoreline Drive West. We don't, but we can we can impose things on businesses that are within
yes,
that
you
area.
can do it on the businesses and how they access the road and how far back and sidewalks and all that.
And access and egress and
But
how
but
continuity.
how people are going to ride bicycles or drive cars or golf carts, I don't see how that.
Well, our
is involved.
Gateway Overlay District does certainly, within the criteria that was intended, influence everything along Beach Drive that they tried to address, which was landscaping, it was sidewalks, it was other things that the Gateway
driveway,
Overlay-
curb cuts, amount of parking that can be in front of a building.
Yes.
things of that-
Exactly.
And
That's
we-
what I said. We can control that, but the
we
roads we
can't
can't.
control the pavement, but we can of the street, but we can control the businesses and the areas. That's where the overlay district was.
Because I
was
think too,
established.
I mean, a perfect example for me is a sanctuary. Okay, now they place their egress driveway. It's here, post office is here. Okay, not very smart. Okay, because now the traffic, when the sanctuary comes on board, there's going to be a lot of residential traffic comes out of there, and it's going to impact the post office traffic, and the intersections are
And again, that goes back to
100 feet apart.
Yeah, we don't have control of that because
That's-
the
Thank
driveway
you.
permit.
That's my
that-
point.
We don't have control of it. We can't tell the developer your egress from your development has to come out here.
No, because they propose it to NCDOT.
They approve it.
NCDOT has the ability to say, hey, scoot this over
Yeah.
X amount of feet,
Yeah.
Okay.
but it's up to
Would our
DOT.
technical review process have any influence?
You
over-
could voluntarily ask, but you could not bind someone to your recommendation.
Yeah, and
Now, when you say that, all that information is sent to DOT for
Yeah.
review.
Yeah.
I do that anyway.
That they're
But
they're
they
the
provide
body.
comments back on
Yeah.
it. They look at it and
Are we in that loop? Are you in that loop?
I'm in that loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Is the technical review committee in that loop?
Yes, but remember,
Yeah.
none of us are transportation engineers. So until the town has a transportation engineer
Yeah.
on staff,
Oh, I'm
or a consultant, there's
well, I don't know if
We're-
we can control it, but we can certainly ask. And obviously, in a collaborative way with the developer and the powers that be that build the roads, I think there needs to be some provision in here. Yes, I agree with civil. We don't control it, but
Well, we can't put.
But that's
provision.
why, so basically what I'm saying is the way it's written right now is what we can do.
Sure.
And it's what we are doing.
that's correct. There's
So
you-
why are we
you're
messing with
limiting
it?
driveway curb cuts. You're doing things that make it potentially safer, but we're not talking about modifying the as Pete said, the asphalt,
Yeah.
the pavement lanes, anything like that. That's under the purview of DOT, and it could be under the purview of the town. I'm sure DOT would be happy to turn that road over to the town, but I don't think the town wants
The
any
town
bit.
doesn't want
They would
No.
jump all over that.
They would,
That's
yes,
the deal.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm just saying leave
Yeah.
it like it is. That's,
And we're not changing any of the wording here. It's all, you cut and pasted it from the old.
That's correct.
PDF.
There's minor modifications in here.
Well, it
Yeah.
just talks about planning and inspections director, and it talks about people. It doesn't talk about really any of the uses or anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things that we are faced with that are problematic. As you pull out of the parking lot here and try to take a left turn, you're crossing two solid yellow lines. I mean, talk about a traffic violation. We're not allowed to do that.
and also when you go out of the other exit and you want to turn right because of the shrubbery there, if you're not in an SUV, you can't see the traffic coming. Just thought I'd point that out.
That's
Well,
probably in violation.
Well, that's
of site
something we
triangle.
can control.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's site distance.
Site triangle.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
All right, I have nothing else on that page. When we come to the definition, I don't want to say definition, the location of our gateway overlay district limits. That's in number 3.3 B2, and it talks about applicability, and it defines Route 904, Sunset Boulevard, da 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 da. We always seem, in our present gateway overlay district parameters, limits, geographic references, we always seem to ignore the MB2 area on the north side of Old Georgetown Road, across the street from the old Piggly Wiggly. That is a huge section of MB2 that is within our town. It's within our municipality. But we start talking about this as it begins at the intersection of Old Georgetown Road and 904, and it runs southward. Well, it also runs northward.
I don't remember why that was, but there was a reason for that, and I couldn't tell you without having to go back.
Unless we didn't
many
want
years
the
ago.
overlay district to apply to that section of land.
There was some reasoning behind it. I don't remember why, but there was. I don't know if there was a project that was potentially going to be proposed or something that was going on at the time.
Now, that's the area where Talk of the Town is, correct?
It's across the street from Talk of the Town.
But yeah,
Talk of the Town is outside of our
Oh, okay.
jurisdiction.
I don't remember why it was because this process took almost 9 months.
I know it's in our jurisdiction
Yeah.
because our Department of Public Works has to get on them twice a year to mow that. I'll
Yep.
bet there's 25 acres right there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big triangular lot
Mhm.
that it backsides on Windfall.
Mm-hmm.
And it creates a big triangle that goes
Yep.
all the way up towards the refuse center,
Yep.
or towards that, in that direction.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Can I make a suggestion and an ask? So both in the one and the same. To help define this better, I'm going to ask if Wes can do this. Can we define this on this map?
It should be.
It's
And
not.
many years ago, it was put on there, and I don't know. It's gotten in a
I
chat.
have a hard
this
enough time
discussion.
reading the map without
Yes.
double
So-
references.
So let me ask you this.
It
to
got
help
lost
define
in
this
reference.
better, putting that back on there on the map. Would
Well,
that
maybe we
help
could have two
define it?
maps, one
No.
sans overlay district and then one with
Yeah,
the overlay district.
if you put it on the map, you don't need to define it here because
That's
none
right.
of the other, we're not defining where MR3 is
Right.
in this section.
That would
Yeah,
be
no,
my
We
wish.
define it on the zoning.
To
Yeah.
somehow help define this on the map.
Mhm.
And Wes said it did exist. I don't have a map where it does exist.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, we did one years ago, and I just
Yeah, I
need
remember
to look.
seeing it
Well, you
somewhere.
were on the planning board when the overlay district was initiated, weren't you?
No,
nope.
I
was
was
in
not.
between.
That was the period I was
That
not
was in
on. it.
between your, okay.
Mhm.
Well, no one else here then was on the planning board.
So if we can go and readopt the map, just
All right.
as a clarification.
Well, you can take
thing,
all this verbiage out of here then,
That's correct.
okay?
Because
Um,
I promise you, from a staff level point of view, it would be a whole lot easier to look at that
Okay.
way
I
instead of reading through this
Yes.
and measuring and
swear Hiram had a map that had it on there, and I just don't know where that has gone.
Okay.
Um,
As we move down to 2A II, how do you say that?
two.
yep.
2A2, all right. Development within the mixed use district, and then in parentheses, what do you call those things?
Mud. Parentheses or
Mhm.
brackets.
Brackets, MUD district or MUD. I get confused, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that gets confused between the MUD district and the MB2, which is then called multi-use district.
Mhm.
And now we're combining those two references in the same sentence. On our zoning map, we reference the MUD district. And then we also reference the mainland mixed use.
They're two different. Two
Well, I know
different-
they are. But is that saying that exemptions, we can't apply it in the
MUD district.
MUD district?
That's correct.
Does that
was-
also mean we can't apply it in the
No.
mixed-use district?
No.
Because it's
Take
not,
the word misuse
because-
district.
Well,
out of
no.
it.
This is specifically to the mixed-use district or the MUD. The
MB2 is
MB2
mainland business.
mainland business.
Well,
So it's not referencing
No.
MB2.
MB2 is on our zoning map. It says mainland mixed use MB2 on our zoning map. I'm not talking about the
Okay.
text within our document here.
I get where you're cross-referencing it, but
Mhm.
that would not be the case. I could not exempt this from the corridor down
It,
on the
it
left.
would have to say semicolon mainland mixed use district in
or MB2.
and then MB2.
Do we need to call MB2 and reference it as mixed use? Is there a need to even do that?
I don't believe so. I mean, MB2 is applicable here.
Yes, it is very
I
applicable.
mean, that's
and
the main section
Yeah.
of this.
Yeah.
Is the MB2.
yes, but what I'm reading here is that it creates confusion, I think.
I get where, and I get where the confusion's coming from. From a staff point of view, that's not how it is interpreted.
Right.
Mixed use district is the Sunset Villages or
Yes, the
and
village
then
at Sunset
Village,
Beach.
Yep, and then it would have to be development within mixed use district MUD semicolon MB2 parentheses mainland mixed use business.
Okay. I just think that's an important point. I'd hate to confuse it and say that
It's
the
not.
overlay is not appropriate to MB2.
If anyone ever questioned that, there's no way that would
right.
hold a.
Let me go to A3, which talks about churches are exempt. Would that be the case? And I know you recently, because I sent them to you. The Seaside Methodist Church wanted to redo their parking lot, meaning overlay it, not change it. And they wanted to upgrade their light stanchions, and they needed to know the height of their light stanchions that would be appropriate. This right here is implying, and that's within the overlay district.
Mhm.
It would be excluded.
So we can't, they could put a 50-foot pole, light
No.
pole.
They would be subject to. They'd be subject to the outdoor lighting standards elsewhere,
in MR3,
It-
which is
No.
what they
or just a standard
There's
light.
there's an article or a section
lighting,
just
yeah.
for lighting specifically, light
Yeah.
trespass,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
illuminations.
Yeah.
You know
Okay.
like all that.
But if the overlay district implied a different requirement on lighting,
So think about
They
it
would
like
not
this.
be applicable.
Yeah, think about it
Okay,
like this.
all right.
It goes in layers. When somebody comes to me, such as the MB2, you have to apply the MB2 requirements first.
Mhm.
They meet all those. Then, because they're in the overlay, you apply the other layer on top of it to meet those standards as well. So, and there's a provision, I don't know if Wes
There
took it
is.
out, in Article 1, it's whatever the most restrictive applies
there is.
here.
There is. That's
So
clear to me.
that all that comes into play.
I just read this and I said, churches and Seaside Methodist is maybe the only church that's within the overlay district.
It is.
And I knew that they were considering changing this doesn't need to be in the minutes.
Yes, some of this stuff you actually have to look at, like you had those old film sheets where you had a base layer and like, okay, I'm going to apply this film sheet over top of it. This is what the picture looks like and so forth.
But ultimately, it's the most restrictive condition that
Well, and we have language about
It's the
what
top-
an overlay
goes to the
district
top.
is. The overlay district language at the start of this article talks about that it is in addition to the base district language.
Okay.
But there was a discussion specifically about exempting it because the design of those, typically the design of religious institutions, churches, etc., are not traditional per se. And so
All right, you've satisfied
Yeah.
my query on that.
Okay.
Okay.
Moving
Mine
on to 2B, Bravo 1. The last sentence in I1, it says, with no reduction in the size or number of required plantings. What we're talking about here is that in locations where the entire width or length, if you want, frontage, cannot be provided due to something else, with no reduction in the size or number of plantings. That would tell me if I only have control over half of my frontage, I've got to put enough plantings in there as if I had control over the whole thing. So I've got to double up the spacing. Is that what we really mean?
That was put in there. I believe that I might have had a comment to the fact that I'm not sure that makes a lot of sense, but that ultimately was put in place.
I would think it would need to be proportional to the original intent. If we wanted a tree every 25 feet and he has control over half of his property, I don't want a tree every 12 and a half feet.
Yep.
I still want a tree every 25 feet.
So that last bit can be stricken.
Yeah, I guess so. Yes. Yeah, I think it would. I had to look down and reread it. Under that same section B2, we have the wording vehicular surface area.
And once, sorry, I wanted to go back on this.
Go ahead.
This really is in regard to the depth. But yeah, I guess we need to. Planting area shall be provided on an applicable proportional basis. Okay.
Because we want the same look.
Yeah.
Shall be provided to the extent possible. Sense to me.
Under the next section, 2, I don't know what vehicular surface area means. Is it meaning pavement?
That's just a parking lot.
But I mean, I don't know what a vehicular surface area is.
I'm not sure if it's defined or not, but that would be the extent of the parking lot.
Okay.
Or wherever, it's not a parking lot, it's wherever folks are parking their vehicles.
Okay. Okay, so it doesn't have to be pavement. It
Yes.
can be stabilized something or.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Under the next page, which is page 3.7 in our new outline, we're still under 3.3. We have use and design standards, which is number 3, section A. I have no problem with anything here, but the chart, I have no idea if this chart is appropriate or not. I'm not an agronomist I don't know if these trees are locally available, if they're appropriate for this region of the country, if they're weed trees, if
They're not weed trees. I can attest to that. But they were all discussed quite extensively. Certainly the larger trees and shade trees, I just reviewed those. Those are all readily available. The understory trees typically are commonly available as well.
So somebody's looked at this that has local knowledge of.
Yes.
Okay, all right, that would satisfy me.
But this isn't a list of trees that they're required to protect. This is a list of trees that are
that they
permitted.
can select from to put on their site. Yeah.
Right. Question, the sanctuary, is that in the
ETJ.
ETJ, but it's
Mhm.
not in the overlay district?
The
Yes, it is in the overlay district.
it is, yes.
Mhm.
So they just did a substantial planting
Mhm.
that
Looks nice.
mostly palm trees. I'm not sure what the
That's sable palmetto, which is sable palm.
okay. All right, cool.
I think it looks nice, off the record.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be lovely.
All right, then we move into, I'm just looking at the clock. We are warp speed.
Mhm.
Under, okay, we're on 3.3 overlay district. I'm in section 3, or part 3, and I'm under C for access management and pedestrian facilities. There are some discretionary authority given, and planning board is listed under C 1 and 2.
Mhm.
Is that appropriate, or should the administrator or TRC be involved in that?
I don't. I think that's questionable. You know, I yeah, I mean, I think TRC would be the appropriate body because this is a technical matter.
Mhm.
But you know, or
Well, it could be the UDO administrator with the TRC process being applicable, because we have that type wording in other sections
yep, UDO administrator and TRC. Yep,
with the TRC process.
yep,
Yeah. What I'm really saying is it allows the UDO administrator to access the TRC process
yep.
if they feel it's appropriate. But
Yep.
if not, I think the UDO administrator should have the authority to move forward on it. Yes.
Okay. Same with the second one.
Yes, and it also is in 4 as well.
My only
under
concern here,
dumpsters.
would be you don't want planning board have to approve or disapprove something when in the table of how you get there, it doesn't require it go to the planning board, such as a minor site plan.
Well, that's why I'd like to have planning
Yeah.
board struck from here.
Yeah.
Have you be the
Yeah.
decision maker with,
And I like the
able-
TRC because somebody could come to staff and be like, why would you imply this on me type thing. So
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
There's also in D, there's a planning board exemption as well, or planning board applying discretion, which probably needs to be
right, I
stricken.
see that, yes. Mhm.
I think that. I
And
think,
also E.
I think. Yep. So I would strike the lighting sentence altogether. The planning board may apply discretion in selection of any lighting fixtures. Assuming it were to go to you all, I suspect that you guys would have a discussion about their lighting, etc., and in meeting these. But in the event that it is in the UDO administrator, they would have a discussion as well about complying with this similar.
Okay. So it doesn't need to be repeated here within the gateway overlay
Right.
to make it applicable.
Yeah.
So this is just redundant. Okay.
Under architecture, and architecture is always subjective,
Mhm.
it talks about 80%, be finished with at least 80% of one or more of the following da-da-da-da-da.
Mhm.
And it's hard to even have it here because tastes and construction materials change over time. It's who would have thought that fake stone was going to be as popular as it is, and it's in
Mhm.
the majority of our homes now that are being built. But does 80% of the primary building facade, does that include glass? I think it does, but
That I would not interpret that to mean glass. That would come with your transparency requirement. Let's see if there's transparency.
I'm just saying if you could have a building, particularly a commercial building, that has a significant amount of glass, like Food Lion.
Mm-hmm.
It is a significantly glass front building by design. And so if you're trying to calculate 80% of the primary building facade,
Mm-hmm.
do you count the glass in that
That's a
calculation?
good question. And
Sorry.
typically it'd be referred to as glazing by our
Yeah, you're right. That's a construction
Inspector.
term, yes.
But we can just add, I think that's a good point. There would be finished at least 80% of the one of the following materials exclusive of glazing / glass. Yeah.
It just makes the unless you put that in, it makes the calculation difficult.
I would not take it to mean that, but it's not explicitly mentioned, so someone could call that into question.
I know we prohibit flat roofs on residential structures.
Well, you can't on 1 and 2 family. You're not allowed to prohibit those
Flat roofs?
Correct.
because that's a design standard.
Ouch.
Yeah, but on anything that's not subject to the 1 and 2 family building code, yes, you can potentially do that.
And that's elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. And you do have that you do have design standards in Article 9, I believe, that talk about.
Yeah, it's Article 9.
This
Yeah.
is not in obviously what I've given you because we don't have Article 9 yet, but there.
I'll make the reference here to when we get to 9. Look at it.
I think there is a discussion on roof pitch, but if there's not, we can have that discussion.
Well, the thing that was taken out of the overlay district section had to do with gas stations, and it prohibited. There was something about prohibiting flat roofs on convenience stores or gas stations or something like that, and I didn't see that anymore.
There is a provision under I'm not sure why. We had something in here on in the performance standards. Canopies are also mentioned in your
Right.
There, it's already in here. If you go to page, this is why I took it out on page 9-4. In your old code, it says specifically the use of flat roofs on non-residential structures is prohibited.
Okay.
So,
and when we get to that, that's not going to have been changed.
I am not going to propose. We're not proposing to change that. Yeah.
I was concerned because I thought you might have, at least I understood you to say something about you can't control that. We can't legislate that.
Nope. You just already got it in there, and you already have canopies in there as well. So it did not make sense to
Okay.
have it twice.
Why do we not allow flat roofs?
It's just a
I
matter
think
of
of commercial buildings that have facades and then the roof is flat. So I'm just trying to understand why.
I guess it's a matter of preference. I mean, I think that a one-story flat-roofed building is certainly different than a 40-foot tall flat roof building that has a more urban type design. So I mean, when we get to it, that's something where we can have a discussion about, flat roof buildings under a height of X shall be
Okay.
prohibited.
I just
but
didn't understand that.
that's usually why.
Okay, we'll talk about it
And I
later.
think when you get a series of flat roof buildings going along, it gives, I mean, it's a very industrial look.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, the AC
So-
units sit on top. That's why.
I know.
Yep.
We get down to color, and I just have a question for Chad.
Mhm.
When Outfitters recently, right by the roundabout, when they recently repainted everything, their repainting would have had to, even though they were here no, they were built when the overlay district existed. But if I like the paint. I think it looks good. But did they have to come to you to get approval?
They did get approval from
Okay.
me.
They
So
did.
you got to look
They
at their
did.
colors.
Because I had to look at the colors. They had to submit to me the colors.
Because they did change them, but I think it looks nice.
How about that? We had a big discussion about painting when we were going through this in the process that it may not get, someone may paint their building without the town knowing, and proceeding with enforcement on someone painting their building, I feel like could be a tricky thing.
It is a tricky thing, and I'll tell you why.
Sea Trail does it with residences.
That's fine.
That's
That's
HOA.
HOA.
Yeah. But when it came to this, it was tricky. And I had to look at this extensively because if you look at the color wheel there,
Mhm.
it's pretty specific. When you look at 4, Roman numeral 4, IV, the last sentence down there, the number of such colors shall be limited and must be compatible with the overall color scheme.
Talk about subjectivity.
Yes. So at that point, I was like, I've got to prove it because it was in the green, it was in the other colors, and it was like, I don't know how more vague you can get, but when it says compatible, at that point I'm like, well, it's close
When was it repainted? I'll have to go take a look.
within the last 6 months.
Yeah. I noticed it about 3 months ago, and I
Yeah.
said, "Hold it, that's been painted."
No, and it got approval, and the reason why it got approved, and not those specific colors, it said must be compatible. And I did not go to Lowe's and started looking through Sherman-Williams color wheels to make sure, but
And
they were very close and they were compatible.
Do you feel like it is compliant, or do you?
I think it's compliant.
No, I think it is compliant.
Okay.
It's just
All right.
it makes it
I didn't even
difficult.
notice.
I was
I ride
curious
by it all the time.
as much as anything, and I wanted to
Okay.
kind of test the procedure.
Yeah,
for-
no, the procedure.
So,
Yeah,
To
so
me,
Chad, do you want to get rid of that last sentence?
I don't know. Are we? If we get rid of that last sentence, you're
you're locked.
locked into
Yeah.
those.
Yeah.
I like the compatibleness.
Okay.
It's just
Okay.
I think as long as
I
they're
mean,
compatible,
it wouldn't be the first person that's ever come in my office and screamed at me, so we're
Hmm.
fine. I can take it. Take
Uh,
it.
Okay. All right. So it's working then.
Yeah.
Under
is my
H,
question. Yeah.
I'm moving ahead.
Okay, yeah.
Unless somebody wants to
Yeah.
stop. Under H for signage, and I'm not going to get into signs, but because that's a whole another district, another section. But I've always been confused when it says that under 2, that signs containing exposed neon tubing must be displayed within a window. To me, within a window means inside the building. But within a window could mean inside of the frame of the window and hanging outside. It doesn't say inside a window. It says within a window.
Defer to the planning board and the consultant at this
I
one.
mean, what we don't want is, I don't object to an open sign within a window that, or the barber shop that pulls the chain when they're opening it and it's a little neon thing. But we just don't want somebody putting a neon sign, using neon to accent their store.
So, is it fine to be behind the glass or no?
Well, I don't know. Let's discuss it.
Okay.
The things that we see most of the time, they're outside the window. But I can show you places in Charlotte that have neon tubing framing the entire outside of the window, and it's
Got it.
blue.
The-
Existing, old, new. Because a lot of the signs I see now don't
Shallow,
use
not Sunset Beach.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Driving down Main Street, Shallow, you do see a lot of old
I'm looking at
signs.
130 on the way to Holden Beach as you go by Civitan Fire Department.
So one thing I'll say is that I would prefer to not have separate sign regulations in here. This is the only thing that's mentioned. And I think that if you guys are fine with applying this throughout,
Take it
then
out
we
of
need
here?
to just go ahead and take it out. And when we get to signage, and I'm going to put a
Talk
note.
about it.
Put it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
because
a
otherwise
great
you got to change it in 2 places.
Yes.
Correct.
All right.
And I would welcome that because I refer to Article 11 anyway when it comes to most sign regulations.
So that whole section on
Yeah.
signage will get stricken.
So that H goes away.
Yes.
All right, we come to a definition that's been added here appropriately for golf courses, and we want to go to our single-digit handicapper.
I don't think
Right.
so.
It's
Quick question. I know that Sea Trails has been here several times, and I think we all made comments that we would like to see them maintain the 54-hole course. Will this allow them to change from 54 holes down to 45
Sure.
by putting this in?
Yeah, this is just so I appreciate your definition, which is fantastic. I added it. I think the initial definition said it had to be 18 holes.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, but I don't disagree with you. Anything future who wants to put in
This would
executive
not. This
course.
would not preclude. This would. They're already existing. It would not preclude them going to 45.
Okay.
Yeah.
and what they were asking for in what's before the town council right now is a very specific use application where 54 holes comes into play,
Correct.
but it doesn't affect the definition of what a golf course is. But it's
Fine.
it's. Am I correct with that?
Yeah. That.
Okay. I mean it's very topical right now, and it's before town council.
Mhm.
It comes up later this month.
Mhm.
But that is a very narrow request that they're making for very specific uses.
I got one more on
Mhm.
on the driving range on lighting. We are going to allow lighting on ranges if they do happen
It's
to.
limited to the illumination and lighting standards that are already in place in the
Alright.
UDO.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
That's a good point.
I don't remember what
That's a good point.
Yep.
conversations we had in the audit, but those changes will come up if there are any.
That's all I had.
Maybe I see that.
Sure. Wait, unless the chairman has anything further about the definitions or the board.
I do not.
Okay.
No.
We're waiting for our assignment teacher.
Aha. So this section that you have is the first bit. We're meeting here close to when we met last. So all you have is accessory uses. So I was hoping to give you residential uses today as well, but I did not have the time.
Oh.
So this is just accessory uses.
It's just accessory uses, and it is your accessory uses are among the worst I have ever seen.
Will there be something that will go in front of this then?
This just add this at the end of the Article 3 material you have
Right.
at present. So just
Okay.
put it. It starts after Gateway Overlay District.
Right.
So I will say that I believe we talked about this prior, but there's discussion about how the use table is laid out. We have provided for the first time now a list of prohibited uses in the town's jurisdiction. These are not set in stone, something for you to review. And then another item, and then we've added a number of use standards where we felt we needed to add some additional items. One item in particular that I don't believe that we discussed was boat slips on a number of boat slips on private piers and docks. You do have a definition that appears to try to regulate that at present, that limits them to 2. that's been put in here in the draft and something that I think that we haven't talked about that we'll talk about when we meet next. So it may not.
We applied a restriction or at least a limit to Palm Cove when they wanted to put their private slip in there, and we limited it, I think, to 4 or
Well,
something.
that was a whole nother. That was part of that settlement agreement.
Yes.
But
Okay.
I went and I looked at how many slips are typically at your docks. Usually it's limited to 2 or less. But anyways, that's an item of discussion that we'll need to have. There has also been a fair amount of case law that's come out, at least 2 cases that talk about regulating, whether, for example, someone can rent, say you have an accessory, the case law was about whether you had an accessory dwelling unit, which you guys don't have, and we're not going to go there, and whether or not if only an owner can use it versus a renter. So you have some language about your private piers and that only owners can use them that I think potentially is questionable. You can limit the number of them, but I don't think you guys can really get into the business of if you want to rent it to someone else.
Okay,
But
so these are not covered by CAMA.
no.
I think they should be.
You can just defer.
Well,
They are covered by CAMA.
Permit to put in a
They
dock over.
are covered by
wetlands.
CAMA, but CAMA doesn't necessarily have a limit on the number of slips per se, things like that. So, anyways, well, I'm sure we'll have a discussion about it. Suffice it to say, this is all draft, and that it will take some time for us to sort
Okay,
it
we'll
out.
think about that. And I see that the table of contents for Article 3 zoning, we want to cross off the one we had before, which
can
only went up
update
to
it.
3.3.
You can update it with the new one. That's
Okay.
correct. And you do have a section reference now. Hopefully, next time we meet, I will give you the section reference for the old one, where we have new material, obviously, that doesn't reference something former. It just says NA next to it because it's not applicable.
I see it. I see
Okay.
it.
All right.
Yeah, that's great.
Any other
Do you
questions?
guys appreciate that? What he's done is we go through the new format. Over on the right-hand side, he's listed the section that it was before.
Oh, okay.
So if we
Oh,
want to go
that's
back
great.
and look at our margin notes as we went through the first iteration,
Mhm.
we'll know what section to go back to.
And if there's a blank spot there, then it's basically it's a header for material that's below it, and it doesn't need to reference anything. So
Okay.
Same thing for NA, not applicable.
not applicable is if it's a wholly new material.
Okay.
All right, so we really can't proceed, well, I guess we can do whatever we want to do, but I'm not comfortable proceeding with the new information that I haven't had a chance to digest in private. I don't know about the rest of the planning board. We're an hour and 43 minutes into this meeting. We have a 2-hour limit, but we can always exceed that. I might submit that we consider adjourning this meeting. Our next regular planning board meeting is scheduled for the 6th of October.
Correct. We will have a regular planning board meeting that day.
We will,
As of what I'm anticipating, yes.
because we're not having one today.
Correct.
So,
We had this one today instead
So-
of today.
so
October
October
6th
6th.
would be our regular scheduled planning board meeting. Should have a couple things on the agenda.
And we have nothing on the 15th of September because you folks have you've got school or
Yes.
something you do in Raleigh
Yeah, we didn't have anything submitted for September, so
anyway.
yeah.
So
So the next UDO update meeting will be October 20th.
October 20th at 9 a.m.
Yes.
here in council chambers. Is that something that everybody can fit on their schedule?
Yeah.
October 20th at 9 a.m.
Yeah, but that's a long time between meetings.
Yep.
Well,
It's just kind of how it fell into place.
Huh.
There's going to be a lot of homework in here from what you've just given us too. So,
A
Yes.
lot of headaches too.
That's correct.
all right.
But we got a lot done today, so this is
Yeah,
good.
we did. We are at least a meeting ahead of schedule, so this is good.
Oh, that's good news.
This is good. Under public comments, we still have no one in attendance, so we'll assume there's no public comments. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this special meeting.
I so move.
Can we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Well done.